Welcome to Week 3 of our BIM Heroes CPD learning program on digital procurement for AEC. We will be reviewing articles by leaders in our community.
It's all about the finances this week.
Yeah, we're diving deep into the financial side of digital procurement for AEC.
Lots to unpack.
Definitely. We've got this really interesting set of materials from Week 3 of the BIM Heroes CPD learning program.
Right.
We've got an introduction and summary from Ian Rogers, and then he also did some articles on cost planning and value management.
Oh, and there's Alshama Alam's piece, too.
Yeah, Alam's article on adjudicating tender returns. Plus, more from Ian Rogers on dealing with tender errors.
Don't forget Barbara Orsola.
Right. Orsola wrote about monitoring outturn costs, so quite a bit to cover.
It is, yeah.
What we're aiming for today is to extract those nuggets of gold, the most crucial insights and practical knowledge.
Give our listeners a shortcut to really understanding these financial dimensions of digital procurement.
Exactly, and we'll be focusing on what you can actually put into practice, maybe even throw in a few things that'll get you thinking a bit differently.
Right. Like Ian Rogers said in his introduction to Week 3, this week's all about the money.
Yeah.
The financial and evaluative parts of procurement, I should say. You know, cost management is just so crucial, whether a project flies or flops.
Totally, and we're going to explore every nook and cranny of making sure things are financially sound. Speaking of which, Ian Rogers wrote that article, Cost Planning and Value Management Setting Budgets. What jumped out at you when you read that?
Honestly, it was how Rogers hammered home that budgeting is way more than just guesstimating costs. It's this big picture process of squeezing the most value out of a project's whole lifespan. It's like walking this tightrope between what you spend and what you get back in the end, like how well it works, how green it is, and if it ticks all the client's boxes.
You know, that's really interesting because I think a lot of people would just see a budget as a limit, like a don't spend more than this. But Rogers paints it as this tool for achieving optimal value, right? He dives into these really important pieces, like figuring out what the client actually needs, not just what's on paper, benchmarking against other projects to get realistic numbers.
And planning for those curveballs that always seem to pop up.
Right, those unexpected events. But what really stood out to me was his focus on sustainability and how the people who are going to actually use the thing feel from day one. You can't just focus on the initial construction costs, can you?
No, not at all. It's like, he says you have to think about the whole life cost, like operating it, maintaining it. You have to have that long-term view, especially these days with energy costs going through the roof and everyone worried about the environment.
So true. And he makes this really smart connection between that financial strategy and your procurement strategy.
They have to be singing from the same hymn sheet, absolutely.
Then he gets into value engineering, VE, and value management, VM. This is where that whole value concept really takes center stage.
Yeah.
For someone who just thinks of this as cutting costs, how would you explain the real goal and what makes them different?
Okay, so picture it like this. Value engineering, or VE, usually happens when you're already designing and building.
Okay.
It's all about spotting places to save money without messing up how the thing works or what it needs to do.
Kind of like giving the design a financial x-ray, seeing if there are smarter materials or methods to use.
Exactly. Now, value management VM is different. It happens way earlier before you even break ground.
Yeah.
It's about getting all the stakeholders together, the client, the designers, everyone, to decide what value really means for this specific project.
It's asking what's the dream outcome here and what's the best way to get there with the resources we have. Makes total sense. He talks about some real benefits of VE and VM too, like getting experts from different fields together to brainstorm better ways of doing things, or cutting out those parts of the design that don't really add any value.
And sometimes it even pushes you towards innovation, like using offsite construction or finding cool new materials.
I also thought it was really insightful how he ties it back to the client's bigger goals, like those ESG targets everyone's talking about and getting to net zero carbon.
It's about making sure your financial choices support those big ambitions.
Totally.
It's pretty amazing, actually. Some studies have shown that projects that use value management early on can see their value jump by 15 to 20% on average.
Wow.
And they don't have to sacrifice quality either. That's a powerful tool that people often don't even realize is there.
Then he moves on to cost control, and he's adamant about not just slashing costs in a panic when things get tight.
No knee-jerk reactions. Right.
Exactly. He's all about a proactive approach, led by that idea of value. He really pushes for continuous cost planning at every design stage, having clear processes for handling changes, bundling procurement smartly, strong risk management, and keeping a hawk eye on performance.
Sounds like a lot.
Yeah. But he makes a good point with that school project example where skimping on things like lighting or insulation to save money up front actually leads to way higher costs down the line.
And the kids end up learning in a worse environment.
Exactly. It's a classic example of the difference between the initial cost and the true value over time. And it perfectly sets up his discussion on whole life costing, or WLC.
That long-term thinking, yeah.
He breaks down WLC into all its parts, the initial investment, all the operating costs, replacements, and even what happens when the asset reaches the end of its life.
It's considering the entire journey, not just the starting line.
And he directly links it to sustainability. He uses some great examples like opting for LED lighting, even though it might cost more up front, investing in high-performance insulation, or going for modular construction. It really hits home how thinking about the whole lifespan can lead to smarter financial choices, even if you pay a bit more at the beginning.
It's like investing in peace of mind down the line.
Totally. He finishes this section by highlighting how good cross-planning isn't about limiting ambition. It's about making those ambitious projects possible.
It's the framework for making smart decisions, right?
Yes, decisions that line up with the client's business case and allow for innovation, quality, and sustainability.
It's all connected.
The examples he uses, like tech firm workspaces designed for collaboration, optimized warehouses for logistics companies, and incorporating renewable energy sources, they show how effective cost planning can drive that innovation. And he briefly touches on how different procurement strategies like traditional design and build, construction management impact this alignment of cost and value.
He's definitely noticed a shift towards strategies that emphasize creating value, not just grabbing the lowest bid.
Which makes a lot of sense. Procurement shouldn't be a race to the bottom in terms of price. It should be about finding the best overall value for the project from start to finish. Let's shift gears to Alshima Alam's article on adjudicating tender returns. This is that critical point where you're evaluating the bids that have come in and choosing who to work with. What stood out to you from Alam's piece?
It's all about carefully checking those bids against the criteria you set at the beginning. You're looking for the offer that gives you the most bang for your buck.
Best value for money.
Exactly. And she's really clear that you need a consistent, transparent process to make sure everyone who bid gets a fair shake.
She introduces that idea of a bid evaluation panel, which I guess different organizations might call it something different.
Could it be?
But it's usually a temporary team, pulling in experts from different areas. You've got your procurement specialists, the technical folks, and people who actually represent the end users.
It's like getting a 360-degree view.
Exactly. That diverse set of viewpoints seems so important to get a well-rounded assessment of each bid.
Totally agree. You need all those angles to make an informed decision, considering all the factors.
Then she goes into this really detailed breakdown of what to look at during the financial assessment. You've got to make sure all costs are accounted for, handle currency conversions if you've got international bidders, and examine any alternative pricing they offer.
Don't forget comparing the bids to your own estimate.
Right. And scrutinizing things like discounts, retentions, payment terms, even the cost of spare parts down the line. It's very thorough.
And the technical assessment's no slouch either.
No kidding.
She's talking about looking at alternative technical solutions bidders propose, checking their claimed production capacity, which might even involve a site visit, making sure any spare parts work with your existing equipment. And this is key, considering the whole life costs tied to the technical side of the bid.
There's that long-term value concept again.
Absolutely. And she doesn't stop there. She also talks about capacity assessment, which is all about making sure the company's bidding can actually deliver on their promises. Can they handle it financially? Do they have the capability?
And she even touches on the situations where a bidder might need some financial help up front.
Yeah.
That's smart, thinking ahead to avoid potential problems during the project.
A bid might look amazing on paper, technically perfect, but if the company's going to go belly up halfway through,
You're in trouble.
exactly, you're going to be hit with delays and costs going through the roof. Alam also lays out some really great best practices for the whole tender evaluation process. Things like treating all bidders equally, opening and processing bids simultaneously, having a clear way to handle questions from tenderers.
Oh, and maintaining a detailed audit trail.
Yes, all decisions properly documented and signed off, notifying bidders if big changes happen to the specs, and even giving feedback to the bidders who weren't successful.
I think that feedback part often gets forgotten, but it can help the whole industry improve.
It really can. You build better relationships with suppliers and encourage them to keep raising the bar on their bids. And that focus on equal treatment and a clear audit trail that's crucial for keeping everything above board and preventing anyone from crying foul.
Absolutely. Then she dives into the different types of criteria you might use to assess tenders. There are mandatory criteria, those pass-fail must-haves. Then you've got weighted criteria, where you score bidders based on how well they meet certain requirements.
And then there's a combo approach.
Right, a mix of mandatory minimums and weighted scoring for other elements. It's a good framework for structuring the whole evaluation.
Agreed. And she makes this really important point about keeping the technical and financial evaluations separate, at least at the start.
Keeps things objective, right?
Yeah, it prevents the price tag from coloring your judgment of the technical merits of a bid, or vice versa. And that point she raises about sometimes getting an independent specialist to analyze financial offers, potentially even rejecting them if they seem too good to be true.
Intemerity, as she calls it.
Right, basically underbidding so low it's unsustainable. That's a big red flag. Sometimes that super low price is a sign of trouble down the road.
Better safe than sorry. Next, she moves into transparency and procurement, which she argues is just as important as having solid processes. She defines it as making the whole process and all the transactions easy to understand and accessible to everyone involved.
What I find interesting is that she highlights how transparency is good for both sides, the buyers and the sellers. It builds trust and makes sure everyone knows how decisions are made.
And she's not vague about it. She lists out the key elements of transparency.
Right.
Things like giving everyone access to information, tender notices of evaluation criteria, details of contracts awarded, ensuring there's open competition.
Requiring disclosure of any conflicts of interest, engaging stakeholders throughout the process, and making sure all the procurement rules and procedures are clear and documented.
It all adds up to a more open and fair system.
Definitely. And the benefits she lays out are pretty compelling. Better record keeping, chances to keep improving your processes, cost savings through more competition, a level playing field for all bidders, improved strategic planning, and in the end, a better return on investment for the organization.
Makes a strong case for transparency.
Absolutely.
Wrapping up her article, Alam touches on different methodologies for evaluating tenders. There's LPTA, lowest price technically acceptable, which is used when the technical needs are crystal clear and the price tag is the main driver.
Then there's BV, best value, which uses a weighted scoring system to judge technical, financial, and even sustainability aspects.
Right. And then there's MCDA, multi-criteria decision analysis, which can handle a whole bunch of factors.
Like total cost of ownership, supplier sustainability, risk, and ESG considerations. They often use a mathematical model to help make the decision.
She specifically mentions integrating sustainability criteria aligned with ISO 2400. It shows how environmental, social, and economic factors are becoming baked into procurement decisions these days.
It's not just about the bottom line anymore. And that brief explanation of the quantitative scoring model using that weighted sum formula gives a little peek into how these more complex evaluations work and how they try to be more objective.
You're right. It's not just throwing darts at a board. And then there's a mention of the Tender Evaluation Committee, the TEC, and needing those auditable evaluation reports. More emphasis on governance and accountability in this critical stage.
Checks and balances are important. Now let's talk about Ian Rogers' article on dealing with tender errors. This is where things can get tricky and messy.
Right. Lots of potential for disputes if you don't handle it right.
Exactly. Rogers starts off by setting down a really important principle. Managing tender errors effectively has to align with ethical standards, legal requirements, and just plain good procurement practices. It's a solid foundation for the whole discussion.
He then jumps into the super detailed breakdown of all the different types of errors you might see in tender submissions.
Oh, yeah.
He's got arithmetical errors like miscalculations in the pricing, omissions where bidders forget to include some crucial information, transcription errors where numbers are copied wrong, minor clerical errors, those pesky typos.
Ambiguous or contradictory information within a bid. And then there's the big one, failing to meet those mandatory requirements, those non-negotiable conditions.
For each one, he offers practical advice on how to deal with it, really emphasizing things like double-checking calculations, using automated checks where possible, getting clarification from the bidder if the rules allow it.
And using standardized methods for correction.
Oh, and documenting everything, every single step.
So important. The level of detail he goes into for each type of error is so helpful for anyone who's part of evaluating tenders. Gives you clear guidance on how to approach these situations that, let's be honest, can be pretty frustrating.
Absolutely. And he really stresses making sure all bidders are treated the same throughout the error correction process. You got to maintain that fairness and keep the competition legit.
Totally agree. Then he dives into the legal side of tender errors, which is a whole other layer of complexity.
He reminds us about those principles of fairness and transparency that are at the heart of procurement law, how any changes or corrections to tenders have to be handled by the book, and how a bid could be tossed out if the errors are serious enough.
And you have to have a clear process for bidders to challenge things or ask questions if they think a mistake was made in handling an error.
It's a good reminder that there can be real legal fallout if these errors aren't addressed properly.
For sure. Then he outlines some best practices, things like having clear policies and procedures for dealing with errors, making sure your procurement team knows those procedures inside and out,
Having regular checks to make sure everyone's following the rules.
and keeping meticulous records of every error and how it was resolved. It's a really solid framework for being proactive in managing this risk.
He then makes this key distinction between what he calls material errors and minor errors.
The big ones versus the little ones.
Yeah, material errors are those big blunders that impact the integrity or compliance of a bid, while minor errors don't really affect the overall competitiveness or compliance.
Like missing crucial documents or not meeting critical technical specs would be material errors.
Right. While simple typos or small arithmetic errors where the unit rates are clear would usually be considered minor.
The way you handle them is totally different too. Material errors often lead to automatic disqualification.
While with minor errors, you might be able to get clarification from the bidder or make a fair correction.
Knowing the difference is key to making sure your response is appropriate and that you're not opening yourself up to legal challenges.
He even brings up standard form contracts like FEIX and NEC, mentioning that not complying with technical specs under those contracts is a material error. That's a helpful pointer for anyone working with those agreements.
Very practical advice.
He also stresses the ethical side of handling tender errors, pulling in guidelines from organizations like CIPS. It's all about ensuring a level playing field, being transparent and accountable in how you deal with errors, and having strong anti-corruption measures in place.
He specifically advises against any post-bid negotiations, which could look like you're trying to fix errors in a way that favors one bidder over others.
Right, that could really undermine the integrity of the process.
Ethical behavior has to be at the core of everything you do in procurement, and dealing with errors is a big test of that commitment.
Absolutely. Then he gives us specific protocols for bid correction. He covers that initial screening of bids to make sure everything's there and flag any big omissions. Then there's the process for formally asking bidders for clarification if the rules allow it and the error is minor.
He also covers how to handle arithmetical errors, using set formulas, being careful not to accidentally change the price in a way that impacts the competition.
And again, he emphasizes meticulous documentation and reporting of all errors and how they were resolved in that tender evaluation report. It's a practical, step-by-step guide for dealing with errors in a consistent and auditable way.
A great roadmap for navigating that tricky territory. Now let's move on to Barbara Orsola's article, Monitoring Outturn Costs. This shifts our focus to what happens after you've awarded the contract and how to keep the project's finances on track.
After the ink is dry, so to speak.
Exactly. Orsola starts by saying that effective cost control is about way more than just watching where the money's going. You also need to be closely tracking the progress of the work and the project schedule.
It's about making sure the project delivers what it promised.
Meeting the client's expectations, finishing on time, and of course staying within budget.
All of the things that make for a happy client and a successful project.
Precisely. She then makes this clear distinction between project cost management, which is all the work you do before the project even begins, planning, estimating, budgeting, and project cost control, which is that ongoing process of monitoring the actual costs.
Making sure they line up with the budget and taking action if things start to veer off course.
Right. And she outlines the key processes for effective cost management.
Laying out the essentials.
Exactly. You need a clear plan for how cost will be managed, accurate cost estimates, which can be a real challenge in today's market, a detailed budget that acts as your baseline, and then that crucial step of actually controlling costs through regular monitoring and analysis.
Then she introduces this concept of earned value analysis, or EVA. It's a more sophisticated way of measuring how much work has actually been completed compared to what was planned and what's been spent.
It goes beyond just looking at basic cost and schedule reports.
And the key here is earned value, which she defines as the budgeted cost of the work that's actually been done.
So you get a clearer picture of how the project is actually performing.
And what's really cool about EVA is that it lets you forecast the total cost of the project at completion and even the likely finish date based on the progress you've made and how quickly you're burning through budget and time.
It's like peering into a crystal ball.
In a way, yeah. But she does point out that these forecasts depend on the assumption that the current trends will continue.
Right. No guarantees in life or projects.
She also emphasizes that for EVA to work well, you need a solid project plan, especially a clear scope statement that spells out exactly what's included in the project and a robust work breakdown structure, or WBS.
Breaking the project down into bite-sized chunks.
And that saying she uses, if it's not in the WBS, it's not in the project, that really underscores how important the WBS is for setting the boundaries.
Totally. The WBS is like that organizational tree that helps you plan, schedule, allocate budgets, and track earned value against specific deliverables.
Then, Ursula explains the 3 core concepts of earned value management, or EVM. Planned value, or PV, which is the budgeted cost of the work that should have been done by a specific time. Actual cost, or AC, what you've actually spent to get the work done. And earned value, or EV, which is the budgeted cost of the work you've actually finished.
So PV is what you plan to spend, AC is what you actually spent, and EV is the value of the work that's done.
It's like a little equation. And understanding those 3 is crucial for something called variance analysis. Schedule variance, or SV, tells you if you're ahead or behind schedule, and cost variance, or CV, tells you if you're over or under budget.
So SV is for time, CV is for money.
She does note, though, that SV can sometimes be a bit misleading on its own. Then she introduces the performance indexes, also known as burn rates. There's the Schedule Performance Index, or SPI, which measures how efficiently you're using your time.
And the Cost Performance Index, or CPI, which tells you how efficiently you're using your budget.
These indexes give you a quick snapshot of the project's health in terms of schedule and cost.
A quick health check.
Exactly. And she lists potential reasons for both good and bad cost performance, ranging from finding efficiencies and having less complex tasks to things like having to redo work, unclear requirements, and scope creep.
It's all about understanding why the numbers are what they are so you can take action.
She also talks about estimates to complete, introducing the estimate at completion, or EAC, which is a projection of the final cost, and the budget at completion, or BAC, your original total budget.
Making sure things align.
And she mentions a common formula for figuring out the EAC based on the CPI. It's a data-driven way to predict that final cost.
It's like using your past performance to look into the future.
She also gives us 5 basic rules for effective EVM: having a WBS-based organization, a logical project schedule, allocating budgets to specific chunks of work, having objective ways to measure progress, and using variance analysis and change control to manage the project. It's a clear set of principles for anyone wanting to implement EVM.
A great starting point.
But here's an interesting thing she points out. EVM, while widely used internationally, doesn't always fit perfectly for contractors working with unit price agreements. Their payment is based on how much work they complete, not tied directly to their costs or a fixed upfront price.
It's a different way of doing business.
But then she mentions this paper that proposes tweaking EVM for those types of contracts. It adds a baseline for production and profitability and introduces some new indicators. It seems like a really useful way to get better insights into both cost and production performance in unit price contracts.
It's about adapting tools to fit the situation, which is smart.
Exactly. Finally, we come to Ian Rogers' summary of week 3, where he brings all these different ideas together.
Tying it all up in a neat bow.
He reminds us that the week's focus was on the financial and evaluative parts of effective procurement, aligning cost with value, making sure tendering is fair, handling errors responsibly, and keeping that budget in check.
The cornerstones of good procurement.
He goes back over the key points from his articles on cost planning and value management. Strategic budgeting, using VE and VM to maximize value, taking the long view with whole life costs, focusing on value for money, and all those different cost control strategies. His big takeaway is that good cost planning puts the client first, it's all about value, and it's flexible.
It's adaptable to the situation.
Then he summarizes Elshma Alam's article on judging tender returns. He emphasizes that structured evaluation process, considering both price and qualitative factors, using the right assessment metrics, prioritizing best value, and the critical role of transparency and fairness, especially in public procurement. He's adamant that having a strong, fair, and well-documented tender evaluation process is absolutely essential for making sure procurement is done right and projects are successful.
It's the foundation of trust and integrity.
Then he summarizes his own article on handling tender errors, covering all the common types of errors, the legal risks if you mishandle them, the right ways to fix things, and the ethical considerations. He emphasizes that handling errors fairly and knowing the legal ins and outs is crucial for protecting the tender process and minimizing disputes.
It's all about being careful and doing things by the book.
Last but not least, he summarizes Barbara Orsola's article on monitoring outturn costs. Real-time cost tracking, using EVM to assess progress and make predictions, regular cost reporting with variance and trend analysis, and linking procurement decisions to overall cost management. His big takeaway is that constantly monitoring costs is key to delivering the budgeted value and proactively managing any financial risks that pop up.
Staying on top of things.
It's a really comprehensive look at the financial engine that drives digital procurement in the AEC sector.
Absolutely.
Well, we look forward to the next edition in this key learning program. Considering the interplay between upfront cost savings and long-term value in digital procurement, how might a greater emphasis on whole-life costing principles fundamentally shift decision-making in your projects? And what tools or metrics could best support this shift?